Welcome, everyone. We're talking disclaimers today. Let me share my screen here. I'm just getting over a cold, so sorry my voice is a little rough. May not have as much energy as usual, but I got an exciting topic today. We'll be talking about disclaimers. So I had a full circle moment recently. I had a client come in and he was a son. I helped his parents about a decade ago. And the son, he said that he wanted to pass his inheritance to his kids. And I was impressed that he knew that he had this option. And I thought, wow, am I doing a good enough job right now educating my clients about this? So that's why we're having this workshop today. I want to make sure everyone knows the power of disclaimers and how you can edit or change an estate plan with them. All right. So what is a disclaimer? So legally, it's saying that no thanks, I'll pass. So if someone wants to give you something, you don't have to accept it. Same thing with an inheritance. Now, why would someone disclaim their inheritance? There could be different reasons. I have some scenarios we'll go through later, show some specific reason why. But it could be to shift wealth to children or grandchildren, reduce estate tax exposure, avoid income spikes, or to keep inheritances fair and balanced. Now, the key is if it's qualified, it's treated as if the person never received the inheritance at all. It's as if they predeceased the decedent and the estate plan steps in to tell us what happens next. But here's the catch. The estate plan has to be ready for it. So the trust document has to say the trust, or sometimes it could be like an IRA or life insurance. If there's no fallback language, then a disclaimer is not going to be possible. So to be qualified, it means that it must pass per the trust or the beneficiary designation. If the trust says if predeceased, his share goes to his kids, that's the language that's triggered. That would make a disclaimer possible in that situation. But if the trust says if predeceased, the share will lapse, then a disclaimer may not work. So thanks to everyone watching here live and in the future on the replay. If you have any comments or questions, you can put those in the chat. I'll try to get to them at the end. Or if you're watching on the replay, I can get to them later. Okay, so the qualified disclaimer rules, it's got to be in writing and irrevocable. It's got to be done within 9 months and no benefits accepted before. And it must follow the original plan. So let's walk through some scenarios here. All right, scenario number 1, we got Jason, the overachiever Carter. So Jason's 52, retired tech founder, obsessed with cold plunges and smart home gadgets. He's got a daughter in law school and a son in Thailand starting a kombucha brand. So Jason inherits $2 million in a traditional IRA from his late father. He already has a net worth of $7.5 million. If Jason takes the whole IRA, it would create a significant income spike once he takes that income. And it would add to his estate, making it closer to being a taxable estate. The beneficiary form, it has contingent beneficiaries. So his dad listed Jason's children as the contingent beneficiaries. That allows a qualified disclaimer to work. Jason files the disclaimer properly, and the IRA skips him, and it goes to his children. The funds transfer directly to his 2 children with an inherited IRA accounts in their names. They're each subject to the 10-year distribution rule under the Secure Act, but in a much lower tax bracket than their father. So Jason avoids a massive tax hit, no added income. The $2 million stays out of his estate, so he doesn't have to worry about having a taxable estate. And he achieves, or his kids get a 10-year stretch out. And Jason achieves cool dad status by setting his kids up with a smart, tax advantage inheritance. So, questions. So, what if the IRA did not list contingent beneficiaries? Well, if it didn't list them, a disclaimer may not be possible. If there was no beneficiaries listed after Jason and he disclaimed, then we would have to take a look at his father's last will and testament that controls his estate. And depending on what the will says, it might make a disclaimer possible. Could Jason just have disclaimed a portion? Yes, you can do a partial disclaimer. You don't have to disclaim the full amount. You can disclaim part of it. Now, how would this work with real estate? So with real estate, it depends on what's controlling the real estate. If the real estate is in a trust, does the trust provide a contingent beneficiary, or we need to know what's controlling the real estate? All right, number 2, we have Linda, the diplomat Morales. So she's 68. She's a retired teacher. She loves color-coded planners, spreadsheets, and afternoon tea. She has 2 daughters from a previous marriage, and she's married to Tom, who has 2 sons of his own. Known for being fair, methodical, and emotionally intelligent. So Linda inherits $2.8 million from her late husband Tom's revocable living trust, which becomes irrevocable after his death. The trust had a blended family provision. The surviving spouse, Linda, could receive all assets outright or could disclaim any portion. Any disclaimed amount would pass to a family equalization subtrust earmarked for Tom's sons. Linda loved Tom and wanted to respect his wishes, but she didn't want to amend her own estate plan to include his sons, and she didn't want to make lifetime gifts or trigger gift tax complications. So Linda could receive all of the assets, or she could disclaim a portion of it. And any part she disclaimed would go to her husband Tom's kids in the subtrust. So after reviewing her financial situation, Linda decided that she only needed $2.2 million. She executes a qualified disclaimer of $600,000. And so the results, Linda's financially secure and emotionally at peace. She did right by Tom and didn't need to rewrite her will. Tom's son received what was intended without feeling like afterthoughts. And the trust is honored as written with 0 family conflict or litigation. Because it was a qualified disclaimer, no gift tax was triggered, and the IRS treated the transfer as if Linda never inherited the $600,000. Okay, so what if the trust didn't say where the money should go? Well, if it didn't say where it would go, then Linda's disclaimer would have failed, or it wouldn't have gone to Tom's sons. So this is an example of planning ahead for a disclaimer. Although I don't typically see plans like this, because this is giving everything first to the spouse, and then it's giving the spouse the option whether they want to send anything to the kids. This is an option if you want to, first take care of your spouse. She is the primary beneficiary, and there's no guarantee that anything would end up going to his kids. Could Linda have chosen a different amount? Yeah, she could. She could disclaim any part of it or all of it. So what if she had already used some of the money? So if Linda had already used some of the money, she wouldn't be able to do the disclaimer. Once you accept any benefit, the right to disclaim that portion is lost. So how is this different from a lifetime gift? With the disclaimer, it was pre-inheritance, so it's not subject to the gift tax, and it passes according to the original estate plan, making it cleaner and more defensible. All right. Scenario 3, we have Cheryl, the legacy builder, Lynn. So Cheryl, 59, retired biotech investor. She paddleboards and collects fine wine. What a legend. Look at her here. She's got her wine on her paddleboard. And she throws epic scavenger hunts for the grandkids. So Cheryl's got a net worth on her own of $12 million before she inherited $10 million from her late mother's irrevocable trust. The trust places all inheritance in GST-exempt dynasty trust. The goals, Cheryl doesn't need the entire $10 million herself, and she wanted to push long-term wealth directly to her children, the grandchildren. But even with the portion she retained, she was already protected. So Cheryl decided to disclaim $4 million, choosing to redirect it into the dynasty trust for her children. The remaining $6 million is allocated to her personal dynasty trust that remains available for use during her lifetime. All assets, whether disclaimed or retained, remain outside of her estate. So even the $6 million that Cheryl keeps in her estate it's not, even the $6 million that she keeps in the trust, the dynasty trust, is not part of her estate. That's because it's in the dynasty trust. The $4 million disclaimed, it goes into the kids exempt GST dynasty trust, and it avoids taxation now and in future generations. It's also protected from future divorce, lawsuits, or poor choices of the kids. All right, questions. Can Cheryl disclaim or can Cheryl disclaim into trust she created? No, she can't. So a qualified disclaimer requires the resulting trust to be predefined in the original estate plan. Cheryl can't control or modify it. So this is a really good plan. It was already built in to go into dynasty trust for Cheryl, and it had the option that if Cheryl predeceased or disclaimed, the share would go to her children inside of a dynasty trust. What if the kids are minors? That's okay. The dynasty trusts are going to hold it, and they'll have a trustee manage it until the kids reach a certain age. Will Cheryl have a taxable estate because of the inheritance? No. So her estate of $10 million on her own is close to being taxable. At the current level is $13 million when I'm recording this in 2025. But the inheritance from her mom is not part of her estate because it goes into that GST exempt dynasty trust. So great planning by her mom to have that dynasty trust. All right, planning tips. So disclaimers are tools for flexibility after death, but the estate plan must be written with that flexibility in mind. A disclaimer only works if the document has clear next steps. So you want to review your trust, review the beneficiary forms and your life insurance and IRAs, and make sure there's contingent beneficiaries. We can't predict the future, but disclaimers are a good way for flexibility. All right, next workshop, we're taking a break for May. We usually do these the end of the month. Everyone's going to be doing graduation and going to be gone. So we're going to be taking a break for May, but we'll be back in June 5th, 5 o'clock. We're going to be talking about powers of attorney, durable powers of attorney, healthcare powers of attorney, and something a little bit different for the summertime travel. We'll be talking about parental powers of attorney. So if you're traveling and leaving minor kids in someone else's care, even just for a week, this document can make all the difference. Whether you're headed out of town or even out of the country, it's a smart and simple way to protect your family. So how can we help? If today's discussion raised questions about your own estate plan or your parents' plan, we're here to help. At Rylus Law, we review existing trusts for disclaimers and flexibility, create customized trust language that gives your family options, and build plans that adapt so your legacy isn't locked too tightly. You don't want to have to wait for a crisis to get clarity. You just need a team that makes the process easier and more human. Visit rightlesslaw.com to schedule a consultation or sign up for the next workshop. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spending your time with us today. We'll see you next time, June 5th. Until then, plan well and live well.